Thanks, Naomi, and good morning, everyone. It was great to hear a very active session prior and engaged. So we're hoping that this session will continue that theme. And we're going to be talking about something that is very important and at the heart of Pacific security, and if I may say, often doesn't always get the attention that it rightly deserves. And it was really encouraging in the previous panel session around transnational crime to hear the recognition of both men and women police officers and community members who have been collaborating around transnational crime. So what we're going to use this session for on women, peace and security is to really dive deeply into the role that Pacific women regularly play in our region as peace builders, human rights defenders, advocates for safe and secure communities, and the contribution of this wonderful panel, as well as many, many more here in the room and through your teams and organisations and communities, is tremendous and significant, and is certainly at the core of what a future ocean of peace is about. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to try to make this really conversational. So I'm going to be a bit different as a moderator, is I'll kick off with one question and then they can jump in whenever you want. But first, let me introduce our expert panelists. So with great honour and privilege, I'll start with Mrs. Litea Seruriatu, who is a retired colonel of the Fiji military forces. After 34 years of service, she's also on the board of the Pacific Security College and has served in missions as part of the UN contribution as well from Fiji. If we can please give a round of applause. Acting Deputy Commissioner for the North, Ms Jill Rogers of New Zealand Police, brings with her over 30 years' experience and a long time service provider, but also advocate for women in leadership and in policing. So please welcome Jill Rogers. Deputy Commissioner Papali'i Monalisa Tiaiketi is from the Samoan Ministry of Police, Prisons and Correction Services. She's got over 20 years' service on the force and is also not only in Samoa but a very significant leader within the Pacific Women's Policing Network. So we're very glad to have you here, Monalisa. And a very familiar face to many here from Fiji, but also around the Pacific, is Ms. Shamima Ali, who's the coordinator of the Fiji Women's Crisis Centre and has been advocating for the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls, as well as defending human rights around the region, and has been chairperson of the Pacific Women's Network Against Violence Against Women. So thank you for being here this morning. So we've got a couple of different sectors on the table and around this table, and women, peace and security can mean many things in many contexts, and how we define things, how we think about them, obviously guides the way we then drive action. So in your career, Litea, what did women, peace and security, what does it mean for you in your line of work, and what do you see as, I guess, the trends that you've seen over time and how you work with women, peace and security in the military forces?
I'm really blessed to be part of this esteemed panel, and thank you to the Pacific Security College for the invitation to be here this morning. Before I go into that, I always love to tell my story, how I joined the Republic of Fiji Military Forces, which is a male-dominated organization some 34 years ago. I was a fresh very young university student, 1987. And I believe my father almost killed me for opting to join the military because I had spent 2 years at the University of the South Pacific. The current Prime Minister, Mbuka, was the commander during that time. And I believe during their tours of duty, UN participation in Lebanon, I think they must have this interaction with the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, who at the time had recruited a lot of women into the forces. And in Fiji, if I remember well, Shamim might correct me for this, with this, the police a few years ago from 1988 when I joined, they had recruited female police officers in the late 70s, if I may be right. So I just decided to, the hype with other young girls. I left my studies, being paid a private student at university, and joined the military. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So the advertisement for cadet officers in the military, including females and males as well. And the recently installed Tuinayau, we were recruited in the military together and we did a cadetship together. So I got in. It was very good news for my parents. So I promised myself, I have chosen this and I have to excel and I have to stay here. I have to make it happen. As I've said, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Even those policymakers, the leaders in the military at that time, because when we got in, on the second week, I wanted to go back home. The training was tough and there was no clear conditions of service for the women during that time. And I'm saying this now, realizing the transition and the shift that is happening and the introduction of the women, peace and security. And this is something that's very close to my heart in the military. And I've continued to mentor young girls in the military because they are here, they have, they entered it into a time and space that a lot of things have improved. So we didn't have that. I didn't have the luxury of having our own infrastructure. Everything was done together with the men. So it was a very tough time that I joined. And for me also, when I always want to define women, peace and security I have my own definition. Okay, women, peace and security, before I highlight the aspects of WPS in the military or in the Republic of Fiji Military Forces. So the focus is on women, the young girl, the woman, the peace and security. Her safety and security is very important, whether she lives with her parents or with the husband, whatever platform or whatever designation or undertaking she's in, she has to be secured. She has to be in an environment that she is peaceful. Well, we cannot really guarantee total peace. That's for me personally. And all barriers are removed so that she can participate and progress effectively in whatever responsibility that she does. That's for me personally my definition of women, peace and security. Please allow me to highlight the key aspects of women, peace and security in the military and for this matter, the Republic of Fiji Military Forces. Very important is the participation. So the WPS agenda being adopted into the military in the late 2018 while I was still there in the military, emphasizes the need for women's increased and meaningful participation in all levels of decision making related to peace and security, including within the military structures. So the WPS agenda recognizes that integrating a gender perspective into conflict prevention strategies can help to address the root causes of conflict and promote sustainable peace. The Women, Peace and Security agenda also encourages the integration of gender considerations into military planning, and this is what we do in the military most of the time as leaders. In the capacity that I was holding in the military, being a former chief of staff, we integrate this into planning, training, and operations to enhance effectiveness in the organizations and promote human rights. So gender integration provides valuable insights into the operational environment and lead to more effective military strategies. So for your information this morning, this is still ongoing. It's still work in progress in the military. Thank you.
We know that there's still a bit of work to be done, even though there's been strides as we hear about good policies and processes to incorporate women, peace and security agenda into work. There is still further work to be done to ensure all women and girls in the Pacific can claim their right to a peaceful society. Now, I'm very honoured to invite Mona Lisa to speak about what women, peace and security mean in your line of work. And I know you're speaking from a Samoan perspective as well as your regional work that you do.
Thank you, Anna. Talofa, Pulavinaka, and warm greetings to our esteemed panelists and also everyone who are in this room. I guess for me, I will try to respond to the question of women, peace and security from a personal experience, but also from a professional experience. But before that, I would like to acknowledge the organizers, the Pacific Security College, for putting this topic up. I think I was looking at the program, and pretty much all the topics are primarily focused on security itself. But I think the topic of women, peace and security is about utilizing the voices of others. Of course, our traditional view of security has always been from a male perspective. And now this is an opportunity for us women, the minority groups, to have a platform to raise and to also address issues, security issues from a female perspective. When I looked at women, peace and security, from a personal experience, I always see that first and foremost, we have our individual identities. As a Samoan woman, I carry with me a Matai title. And that means I not only represent myself when I'm sitting before you, I'm also representing a village in Samoa, Kosapali. And it's our individual identities that we must always remember wherever we go, and use the opportunities that are given to us, whether it be security, whether it be peace discussions. We must first and foremost realize that through us, we are bringing the voices of others who are not present here today. And then looking at it from a personal perspective as well is the role of us women, first and foremost as mothers, as sisters, as wives. We carry so many hats in the things we do every day. And so for me, that's how I see our contribution as women in peace and security, is we bring with us all these layers of responsibilities as individuals and as and what we do on a daily basis. And then moving it into a professional role where I'm currently a Deputy Police Commissioner for Samoa, and having to, I guess, be the unfortunate one, to be the first in pretty much everything in Samoa Police, to be the first police commissioner. When we celebrated 50 years of women in the Samoa Police, we were fortunate enough to also have me as the first female deputy commissioner. And being the first, also you have so many responsibilities to be that role model to the young women of Samoa, and also women who are working in the security sector, may it be police, customs, or immigration. But you have that responsibility of advancing the representation of women in discussions like this one. So I think this is what I see women, peace and security is all about. Is about looking at security, but also recognizing the voices of others like women. So that there's a holistic approach, I guess, in how we deal with security issues. And I know from a woman's perspective that women are very good in planning, organizing, and I think those are the opportunities that we can draw on when we look into how we can address all the issues that's affecting our communities and is affecting the Pacific. And finally, again, recognizing our differences. Yesterday's panel, there was talk about our vulnerabilities. And often, I think, when we talk about vulnerabilities, we think, that we are weak. But that's not necessarily the case. Our vulnerabilities and women knowing what they can and cannot do, and utilizing their male counterparts really can, I guess, draw out the best in all of us, and we'll hopefully be able to find solutions to the many issues that is now facing the Pacific. Thank you.
Whawhitai. I'd like to invite Deputy Police Commissioner Jill Rogers to share about your work in New Zealand and how women, peace and security is thought of in your line of work.
It's a hard act to follow after these two inspirational women to follow on with points. But I do want to say that, while we sit here representing our agencies and organisations that we work for, that the point that's come out really clearly is that even though we are agency and organisation based, we can't do this alone. And so, the point was made so eloquently in the last session about law and order is not the answer to safe communities, and so on its own. And so when I think about security, I think, that people have homes that are safe and free from violence, and that our children go to school and have food on the table, those simple things of having a safe place to call home, and they see a future. And so some of the things that we've talked about yesterday and this morning around the harm that's caused by the risk of transnational crime and things starts in our homes and with people having that sense of security. And we know as soon as there's that disassociation or disconnection from that place of safety, that is where the risk of the harm permeating begins. So from my perspective, my role is to be, like Mona Lisa says, and not by often our own choosing, a person that is seen in a leadership role that is visible, stands for strong values, and represents what the organisation needs to do in partnerships with others to make sure that we can have our children in safe homes, going to school, getting educational outcomes, and dealing with challenges as they come along in a way that doesn't irreversibly damage them on the way. From a women's perspective, there is no more harm that can be done than to hurt women, because that is the degradation of our society. We've seen it for generations. We've seen it through hundreds of years that where communities can be most significantly harmed is the damage that we do to our women. So from an organisational perspective, it's so important that we have people that represent our communities in our organisation. So whether it be a gender issue or a diversity issue or things, we have to make our organisations look like places that people want to work, that we look like we represent the communities that they want to be. And so for us, a challenge at the moment is recruiting people to come to our organisation, because we've heard this morning about that tension between traditional versus non-traditional approaches to things, and who's influential and who are we connected to and how do we see relevance. And as a senior leader, when I'm speaking to people who are new to our organisation, how do I appear relevant to them when I'm 30 years into my role and their needs are different to my needs, and their they face cost of living challenges, they face all sorts of, they want adaptability, they want flexibility in their role, where we were very much hierarchical, and if we were told to do something, you did it. And so the generation that we're recruiting into our organisation now have very different needs from what we do. So how do we make the place that they come into a safe environment where they feel that they can participate while still being themselves? Because the last thing we want to do is cookie cutter them into robots. And so, that's how I see my role, as encouraging people to come into the organisation where they literally get to bring themselves in and bring all the strengths, but we are still responsive to the needs that they have. And so there's that tension there between old, new, generational. So it makes it a really complex challenge for us. But, when I think about security, we have an amazing 22-year-old daughter, and I hope that, she has a prosperous life and, can have career advancement and things like that. But we know that that's not the case for many in our community. So how do we make sure that at the heart of whatever each of our functions are, is that we create those places where people are safe in their homes and can see a future. That's kind of my initial thoughts.
Thank you. And that point about being able to see the future and the possibility of a future came through quite loudly as well yesterday from the politicians. And we're going to turn to Shamima Ali now to share her perspective of what you've seen over many decades, the work around women, peace and security, and to share some reflections there, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mbula Vinaka, my esteemed panelists, fellow panelists, and all the distinguished people in this room. And I'm very disappointed to see such a small group here. Is it because it's about women, peace and security? So see, that's the first thing we have to do. We have to get them in here so they can listen. We've got some very important things to say, as you've heard from the other three panelists. So when I think about women, peace and security, I think about the women in the security forces, and believe you me, we have dealt with them and their issues being in the security forces, because we have a very small number. The numbers are increasing, but the issues are the same. We think about violence against women and girls, which Ms. Rogers alluded to, the other panelists did. Violence against, that's my area of work. That's the work I've done for the last 4 decades of my life, both in Fiji and the Pacific, as part of the Pacific Women's Network Against Violence Against Women. And then, we have very high rates of violence in the Pacific. In fact, Pacific rates are double the world average, 2 in 3 women, in particularly where the prevalence studies were done over 10 years ago, following the the standard WHO modality, adapting it to our needs. In Kiribati, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Fiji, 2 in 3 women suffer from sexual, physical, and emotional violence. And also in Fiji, in the last 12 years, we have had 57 deaths of women at the hands of mostly at their intimate partners, husbands, spouses, partners, boyfriends, and so on. That is not a good picture. So women, I believe, looking also at the Pacific and Fiji, are not at all secure, where they should be the most secure in our own homes. That's not a refuge for many women. There might be. And then we also have the issue of rape. We have sexual harassment, which is rife in Pacific countries. And that's an ongoing work. The rape of children, the rape of elderly women, all those things. So that's my area of work, and that's where I look at women a lot. But that doesn't mean we don't look at women in the security forces and so on, because they also access our services. And then we have women at the table for peace building, for talks on the ocean of peace and so on. Where are the women? They're often missing. I see Sharon here. She has led the work on 1325, trying to ensure that women are part of it, and it's still struggling. Yeah, we're still struggling to get women at the table, and I hope that this meeting, looking at the whole, the book that came out with it, and the huge ambitions in there, that this meeting will actually speak to these things and ensure that women are at the table when we are talking about peace, when we are talking about an ocean of peace and things like that. Yeah, I think I'll just stop there.
Thank you. And so this is where I'm going to kick a question to Litea to kick off, but it's for the panelists to come in at your own leisure in response. But particularly given the breadth of your professional career, and you started to talk about some shifts that you were seeing, and we know there's still a long way to go, but what could you share just some of the critical shifts that you've seen that are helping us take us a step closer towards the inclusive vision of women, peace and security that you've seen throughout your career? So 1 or 2 important shifts in the direction that we're walking towards.
Thank you, Anna. As we all know, that the military is heavily involved in peace support operations, and we go all the way back 40 years ago, 4 decades ago, in Lebanon, and it's ongoing with missions that is being mandated by the United Nations. But as for me personally, while in the military, I always tell the leadership and the women, we cannot give what we don't have. If we don't have peace, how can we take peace to those conflict areas? So this is very important, first and foremost. Otherwise, what we do, it'll just done in shambles, and the output will be not that is expected by whoever's mandated us. And it is very commendable to see in the military over these, ever since I joined, I didn't get to experience all these policies. They said everything, we have to run like the man, we have to do the physical exercises, the prescribed timings. If they have to do 4 chin-ups, we have to do likewise. And it was taking a lot of, giving us a lot of mental issues, especially for the females. And it's really, I'm really happy and excited to see the progress that the Republic of Fiji military forces is currently engaged in, actively contributing to improve women's participation, as well as address the barriers that hinders the progress of women. And one of these outstanding to me, before I left the military, is the inclusion of more women. When we first joined in, we were just a handful, not more than 30. So it was about 3% of the total population of the Republic of Fiji military forces. So I think the leadership, by way of adherence to international policies and regulations. They decided to increase the number of women, which is very common. It's one of the shifts that I've seen. Not only that, the empowerment of women to accelerate through the ranks. Sitting here, I was fortunate to be a former chief of staff. That's the third highest position in the Republic of Fiji Military Forces. But sadly, there is a big gap to the next one that is coming. That's will take another 10 or 15 years, but hopefully that gap will be shortened. And the increase in participation of women in peace support operations, with the United Nations always encouraging militaries over the internationally for peace support operations, they do have to meet the targets of 10%. In the last 5 years, Fiji has reached the targets. For me personally, that's commendable, but reaching the target, there's still a lot of things to be done by way of the ranks of the post that is given by the UN for Fiji women in the military. At the moment, we have the most senior women in with the United Nations headquarters in New York. She is a full colonel, and she is currently Fiji's military and police advisor with the UN. I think she's spending her second term with the United Nations. Increased participation, as well as the gradual improvement in the infrastructure. When I first joined in, we shared the same abolition block with men. And they tell us, oh, you've joined this male dominant, you should act like men as well. But back at home, it was not acceptable. And over the years, this has improved. So this is some of the shifts that I've seen that is very conducive to women in the military. Equal participation, improvement of infrastructures, as well as increase in the numbers. Thank you.
I think for me, in terms of the Samoa police, there's the shifts that we're seeing now in the Samoa police is the increased representation, particularly of women in leadership positions. When I first joined the Samoa police back in 2004, the emphasis on the selection before us was really on the physical attributes of officers. Our recruits changed that rather than measuring our heights, the width of our chests. We were selected primarily on our merits. And I'm seeing that the increase in recruitment of women, particularly in policing across the Pacific. And that's a positive shift for us. So that there's more women who participate in a decision-making of organizations, and also the progress of work that is being done under the Pacific Island Chiefs of Police initiatives. There's also, a growing recognition of the unique skill set that women bring in law enforcement. And Shamima was just mentioning one of the, it's a common issue that we face as law enforcement across the region, is the increase in domestic violence. And as the region having that highest stats is not something good for us. But women in policing now who are more involved in domestic violence units bring with them a perspective that wasn't there in our, traditional policing ways. So there has been a positive change for us, but there continues to be challenges, not only for Samoa Police, but for policing across the region. And those challenges is the continuous gender bias perceptions of our male colleagues, and of course harassments. And we still at this point in time trying to really find solutions as to how we can address those. But, Samoa is not isolated, just from a law enforcement perspective, and then looking at our country having a first female prime minister is something that we are proud of. But at the same time, earlier this year, on the 8th of March, when we were celebrating the International Women's Day in Parliament, a very old parliamentarian stood up and criticized our Prime Minister, not for her merits, but for the fact that she was not married, and said to her that, maybe her decisions were not well placed because she was not married. So those are I guess, things that are happening in our communities that really undermines the progress of women. And the mere fact that in Parliament, no member of Parliament stood up to call out that behavior. So there's still a lot of, I guess, progress that we need to do in this space.
I think of the importance of pushing through those glass ceilings, and so that we're no longer the first at doing things. We've hopefully now, I can't think of too many more firsts that we need to break through, other than probably the Commissioner's role. At the moment, the Commissioner's executive, which consists of 3 people, are all women. So that is certainly a change from the organisation that I joined 30 years ago, when you can see a legitimate pathway through leadership. And just some figures that I got from the team before I came across was, if you look in the last decade, our sergeant rank has doubled in numbers of females. Our senior sergeants has 2.5 times more women represented. Our Pacifica has quadrupled in numbers of people in our organisation. Wahine Māori has doubled in numbers. And so when you're trying to think about building an inclusive place for people to come that represents your community, there's some really good work being reflected through all levels of the organisation. But yeah, it's certainly not finished. You would love to at some stage get to a point where it's, at the moment it sits at 26% of our frontline are female, and that still doesn't feel like enough. But it's certainly very different from the days when I joined and 2 women weren't allowed to work together, whereas now it's quite natural to have 2 women together working together. So there are no barriers like that. We don't have quotas of numbers, but we train in how to manage bias in appointment processes and things, about who should be the best applicant to take that role. We offer our women and men, because that's an increasing number of people who take up flexible employment opportunities, so that you can have your career and still have a family, and not lose your responsibilities or your trajectory or your career goals and things, because you want to also have a family. So.
Yes, I see the Fijian Commissioner for Police is here, so I will talk to the policing and women in the police force. It's good to see the Advanced Women's Network, but I find that should be, I think that should be a temporary special measure. I don't believe, because they should be mainstreamed. They should be part of the police force whenever we have this women's desk and things like that. So we're working to a place of not only equal in numbers, equality, but equity. And because the playing field is very, very uneven, we have to level the playing field. So hopefully that's a TSM, but it gives a place for women to talk and so on. But because I've been involved with these networks, and in the Pacific, not in New Zealand and Australia, but in the other parts of the Pacific, and I find that when women talk about sexual harassment, equal opportunities, training, and so on, those voices are suppressed often. And it's more about how women should behave like women within the organization. And I've seen this over the years. You have some progressive police women come in who take them forward, and there's a lot of homophobia. No lesbians in the police force and so on. If there is, there are very homophobic reactions to it. So when we talk about inclusivity, we're talking about these things here, then we have to address the issue of when we say that, what do we mean? We talk about these things, but we don't mean these things. But things are happening that we're having more women, numbers of women. We have women who have been promoted over recent years, who have been promoted to senior positions. But there is this silent understanding that women, their roles in the home, this is what genderization does, is brought into the force. So you'll see, even if the women are very senior, and I know Reshmi sitting there, that women, when they come in there, no matter how high the rank is, when it comes to an event or so on, they revert to the kitchen table. Who's going to arrange the food? Who's going to do that? Who's going to set the table and so on? Those things matter. They might seem very trivial, but they do matter. They're telling women, that's your real place, actually. So that respect doesn't come. And, we also find that even within the security forces, we find that the abuse or the misuse of religion and culture still persists. So sexism, this is rife, sexual harassment is rife, and so on. And there are no clear ways of dealing with it. The boys' club is still very rife from what I hear, because the women who come to us and tell us these things. While good things are happening, we have to keep at it. And as you said, if women want to go further, we have to keep at it. We can't just say, we got the numbers, we got 30% women. There's even talk, that there are 30% women, if 20% is okay, we've reached the quota. It's not that, it's women. We don't have quotas, just women coming into the police force or into the military forces and so on. Within the military forces, I know that they have a gender policy now, and a department just created, because I know one of my staff has absconded there to head the gender department, but I'm sure she'll do very well there. She's a lawyer by profession, and she went there, and I'm sure we'll see good things. She's a senior lawyer. So, so those things we are seeing, increase of women, inclusion of women in the military. As a feminist, I don't quite agree with that because, what the military represents in Fiji particularly. But if women want to be in the military, then they should be allowed, and they should be on the same, treated the same way as the men are treated in terms of opportunities and treatment and so on. And we have to be very clear about equality and equity. Often when you say we've reached gender equality, there's gender equality, it's just the numbers. The numbers don't matter. It's good to see many more women. We've increased the numbers, recognizing them as people who are very effective within anywhere when we set our minds to do. A woman's place is everywhere, right? The kitchen, the workplace, everywhere that she wants to be. That opportunity should be there. But recognizing that uneven playing field, and what are we doing, the enabling environment for women to thrive in. So we have to do that. It's not, oh, you wanted to enter the military, you wanted to enter the police force, you wanted to enter the Navy. So we go through all of this. We must recognize the uneven playing field, and to even it, we have to have affirmative action, temporary special measures, and things like that.
Thanks, Shamima, and I think that's been a nice sum up too of what there is, to recognise the considerable work and shifts that have been critical to ensuring that the environments become more attractive to people to come and work in these spaces, to provide the service to communities, but there is still a way to go, and I like that phrase, keep at it.